My name is Juliette Rowan. I'm 27 years old. And the night I met Santa Claus, I was standing in the middle of the village square, trying not to cry in front of my little boy. The Christmas lights were flickering above us like they were struggling to stay alive. Just like me. And the wind was so cold it felt like it was cutting straight through my thin coat. I held my son's hand tighter, forcing a smile onto my face as he stared in awe at the giant red-suited man sitting on the wooden throne near the old fountain, surrounded by laughter that didn't belong to us. All I could think about was the eviction notice folded inside my pocket, pressing against my leg like a quiet threat that wouldn't let me breathe. I remember the smell of roasted chestnuts in the air, the sound of children's laughter echoing around the square, and the way my son, Oliver, squeezed my fingers every time he saw another kid run up to Santa. "Mom," he whispered, his voice full of that fragile hope only a child can have. "Do you think Santa knows we don't have a chimney?" I swallowed hard, forcing my throat to open so I could answer. "Of course he does, baby," I said softly. "He finds a way into every house." I didn't tell him that, if things didn't change, there might not even be a house for Santa to find. I didn't tell him that in less than 2 weeks we'd have nowhere to go. Instead, I kept my eyes on the man in the red suit, because for some reason, I couldn't look away. He was different from the other Santas I'd seen in malls and markets through the years. Even from a distance, there was something strangely calm about him. Something too intense for a man in a costume. He didn't just wave at the children. He looked at them, really looked, like he was memorizing their faces. His beard looked too real. His eyes were sharper, more awake, like he didn't quite belong to that painted, glittering world around him. And every time he smiled, there was a shadow behind it, a flicker of something that didn't fit the role he was playing. I told myself it was just my imagination, the way tiredness twisted everything around me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he was wearing more than one disguise that night. Oliver tugged my sleeve, bouncing in place to stay warm. "Can I go, Mom, please?" His cheeks were red from the cold, his little nose runny, his knitted hat too big for his head, sliding down over his eyes. I had bought that hat at a thrift store for almost nothing, but he treated it like a treasure. That was the thing about Oliver. He could turn anything into something magical, even when everything else felt like it was breaking apart. I hesitated, my chest tightening. I didn't have money for gifts, not even for the cheap toys piled in plastic baskets near the vendors. I didn't have anything to give him this Christmas except stories and apologies. The line to see Santa moved slowly, and I knew deep down that if I let him go, I'd be standing face to face with a man dressed as a miracle I couldn't afford. But then I looked down at Oliver's eyes, deep brown and full of a kind of faith I had long since lost, and I couldn't say no. "Okay," I breathed. "Let's go." His face lit up instantly, and before I could change my mind, he was already pulling me toward the small crowd. The square wasn't big, but tonight it felt like the center of the world, with its cheap string lights, the old stone fountain, and a Santa who didn't quite fit the picture. We joined the line quietly, behind a couple taking pictures of their daughter. I tried to focus on breathing, in and out, while my mind kept replaying the landlord's voice telling me I was out of time. It felt cruel to stand in front of fairy lights when everything in my life was falling into darkness. As the line moved forward, the man in the red suit glanced up, scanning the crowd. And then suddenly his gaze stopped. On me. It was a small thing, just a moment, but it landed inside me like a shock. His eyes were an unusual shade of gray, not cold, but piercing, as if he could see straight through my worn-out coat, my forced smile, my carefully hidden fear. For a second, I forgot to breathe. He didn't look away like people usually did when they accidentally met my eyes. He held my gaze, steady and curious, and something in his expression softened, like recognition or concern. My heartbeat tripped over itself, and I looked away first, pretending to fix Oliver's hat, embarrassed by how exposed I suddenly felt. When we finally stepped up to the front of the line, Oliver let go of my hand and ran the last couple of steps towards Santa, his boots slipping a little on the frosty cobblestone. "Careful," I called, reaching out as if I could catch him from a distance. Santa chuckled, a deep, warm sound that didn't feel fake at all, and held out his arms just in time to stop Oliver from stumbling. "Easy there, buddy," he said, his voice rich and calm. "No need to rush, I'm not going anywhere." I froze when I heard his voice. It didn't have that forced jolliness other Santas used. It was real, grounded, with a hint of something I couldn't name. Oliver climbed onto his lap like he'd known him forever. "Hi, Santa," he said, his voice shy but excited. "My name is Oliver and I'm 5. Santa smiled at him, but his eyes flickered briefly to mine, like he was checking if I was okay, like he was silently asking permission to step into our small, fragile world. "5, huh?" he said, returning his focus to my son. "That's a big age. You must have a lot of wishes this year." There was no script in his words. He spoke slowly, like each sentence was meant just for Oliver. I watched them, feeling both grateful and oddly nervous, like I was standing near a fault line about to crack open. "I don't want a lot," Oliver said, shrugging, his little legs swinging in the air. "I just want Mom to smile more. And I want us to stay in our house. So Santa can find us again next year." The words hit me like a punch straight to the stomach. I felt the blood drain from my face, my hands going numb inside my worn gloves. The world around us seemed to fade, the music, the laughter, the lights, until there was only my son's small voice hanging in the frozen air between us. Santa's smile faltered just for a second. His gaze shifted back to me, sharper this time, as if he'd just pieced together a puzzle he didn't know he was solving. I opened my mouth to say something, to laugh it off, to explain that kids say things, that everything was fine, but the lie got stuck in my throat. Santa watched me quietly, his eyes searching my face with a focus that made it impossible to hide. "That's a very important wish," he said eventually, his tone softer now, almost reverent. "Maybe the most important one I've heard tonight." Oliver nodded seriously, like he'd just entrusted the universe with a secret mission. "We got a paper on our door," he added, his voice wobbling just a little. "Mom said it's complicated. But I know complicated is just another word for Santa will fix it, right?" I felt tears burn at the back of my eyes, and I turned my head slightly so Oliver wouldn't see them. I hated this. I hated that my child knew words like eviction and overdue and complicated. I hated that his biggest wish was something I should have been able to give him without magic. I hated that I couldn't. Santa inhaled slowly, like he was steadying himself, and when he spoke again, there was a subtle change in his voice, a hint of steel beneath the warmth. "Oliver," he said, "can you do something very special for me?" My son tilted his head, curious. "What?" "I want you to remember that sometimes," Santa said, "the best gifts don't come in boxes. Sometimes they look like time, or safety, or a chance." His words felt strange, too heavy for a holiday speech, too specific to be random. He glanced at me again, his gaze locking with mine like he was asking a silent question I didn't know how to answer. The air between us felt charged, almost electric. And for the first time that night, I had the unsettling feeling that this wasn't just a man doing seasonal charity. There was something else in his eyes, an ache, a memory, something that made me wonder what he was really doing in that suit, in this small village square on a cold night when everything in my life was on the verge of collapse. "Do you believe in miracles, Oliver?" Santa asked gently. My son hesitated, then looked at me. His eyes met mine, full of doubt and longing. I forced my lips into a shaky smile even as my heart felt like it was breaking. "Sometimes," Oliver said finally. "When Mom tells me stories at night." Santa's lips curved into a softer smile, but his eyes shimmered with something dangerously close to sadness. "Then maybe," he said, "tonight is a good night to keep believing." He placed a hand over his chest, right where his heart was, and for a second, he looked like he was carrying a weight no one else could see. I watched, frozen in place, as Santa reached into the large red sack beside him. I expected him to pull out a small toy car or a stuffed animal, some plastic distraction wrapped in bright paper. Instead, his hand closed around something flat and rectangular. He paused for just a second, as if arguing with himself, then slowly pulled out a small, simple gift wrapped in brown paper and tied with a faded red ribbon. It didn't look like any of the shiny presents stacked at his feet. It looked personal, different. He studied it for a moment, his jaw tightening, and then placed it carefully into Oliver's hands as if it were fragile. "For you," he said, "but also for your mom." My breath caught. I took a step forward before I even realized I was moving. "Wait, that's not necessary," I started, my voice shaking. I didn't want pity. I didn't want charity in front of all these strangers. I didn't want to owe anyone anything. But when he looked up at me, the words died on my tongue. There was no pity in his gaze. Only something deeper, something I couldn't name but felt like a hand reaching into the darkness I'd been living in. "Sometimes," he said quietly, speaking directly to me now, "it's okay to let someone help." His eyes were on mine again, steady and intense, and for a moment the entire square disappeared. It was just us, me, a poor single mother trying to hold everything together with fraying strings, and him, a stranger in a red suit whose gaze felt far too honest. His eyes were the kind you remember, silver gray with tiny specks of warmth that didn't quite hide the tiredness behind them. The kind of eyes that had seen too much but still chose to stay soft. My heart stuttered unexpectedly in my chest, a dangerous, foolish reaction I didn't have the luxury to entertain. Still, I couldn't stop staring back. Something about him pulled me in, like I was standing at the edge of a story I didn't ask for but couldn't walk away from. "Thank you," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. It felt like too small a phrase for a moment, that big. Santa nodded, but he didn't smile this time. Instead, he held my gaze with a seriousness that made my skin prickle. "Juliette," he said quietly. Hearing my name from his lips made me jolt. I didn't remember telling him my name. I replayed the last few minutes in my head, searching for the detail I'd missed, the moment I'd slipped. Maybe someone had said it, maybe I'd mentioned it without realizing, or maybe I was just too tired and everything was getting tangled. Still, the way he said it, soft, familiar, like he'd been waiting to use it, sent a strange shiver down my spine. I started, unsure of what I wanted to ask. "How do you know my name? Who are you, really? Why do you look at me like that? Like you know what it feels like to lose everything and keep smiling for someone who depends on you." But before I could say anything, a group of excited children rushed forward, their parents urging them closer for pictures. The moment snapped like a thread pulled too tight. Santa straightened, slipping back into character with practiced ease, his hands lifting in a jolly gesture as he greeted the next kids in line. It was as if the intimacy of the last few seconds had never happened at all. Oliver slid off his lap carefully, still clutching the brown paper package to his chest like it was made of gold. He ran back to me, breathing little clouds of steam into the cold air. "Mom, did you hear?" he said, eyes shining. He said tonight might be a miracle night. I forced another smile, brushing a strand of hair away from his forehead. "Yeah," I replied softly. "I heard." Santa was already talking to the next child, laughing loudly, his voice booming across the square. But every now and then I caught him glancing in our direction, like he wasn't quite done with us yet. We stepped away from the crowd, closer to the edge of the square where the lights were dimmer and the shadows longer. I wanted to open the package right there, to see what kind of gift came from a Santa with eyes like his, but something stopped me. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the feeling that once I opened it, I couldn't pretend it was just a nice gesture from a stranger anymore. that it would mean something had shifted, however slightly, in a life I'd gotten used to expecting nothing from. Oliver held it out to me eagerly. "Can we open it now?" he asked. I hesitated, looking from his hopeful face to the distant figure in red who still hadn't stopped stealing glances at us. And then, just as I was about to say yes, the wind picked up, carrying with it a faint echo of his voice from across the square as he called out to another child. It shouldn't have meant anything. It was just a man doing a job. But something about the way my name had sounded in his mouth wouldn't leave me alone. I looked down at the package again, fingers trembling slightly as I reached for the ribbon. For the first time in a long time, I had the strange sensation that my life was about to split in two before this night and after. I had no idea yet that the man in the Santa suit was a millionaire. I had no idea that he was carrying his own ghosts, his own regrets, his own reasons for hiding behind a red costume in a small village square. I didn't know that my tired smile and my son's simple wish would reach into wounds he'd spent years pretending didn't exist. All I knew, standing there with the gift in my hands and his gaze burning into my back from across the lights, was that something inside me had shifted the moment our eyes met, and I had no way of knowing just how much that one look would end up costing both of us. I didn't open the package right away. Instead, I found myself standing at the edge of the square, staring at the brown paper like it held a truth I wasn't ready to learn. Oliver tugged at my coat again, his voice muffled by his scarf. "Mom, what if it's something important?" His breath formed tiny clouds in the cold air, and his eyes shone with that innocent confidence that Santa Claus could fix anything. I wished I could believe that too. I wished belief came as easily to me as it did to him. But life had taught me that miracles had a price, sometimes one I couldn't afford. The lights flickered above us, casting warm glows and sudden shadows across the cobblestones. Families passed by, carrying shopping bags and laughing like it was the easiest thing in the world. I had forgotten what it felt like to laugh without worrying what tomorrow demanded from me. But tonight felt different, in a way that made my chest tighten. I loosened the ribbon slowly, my fingers trembling from cold and nerves. Oliver pressed closer, his little hands gripping mine as if he needed to feel the moment with me. And then, just as the wrapping gave way, a voice, low, deep, unmistakably his, carried across the square. "Juliette?" I froze. The sound of my name wasn't loud enough to draw attention, but it was clear, certain, and directed only at me. Slowly, I turned. Santa was standing now, no longer seated on the wooden throne. The kids waiting in line stared in confusion as he stepped down from the platform, ignoring the calls of the event organizers. He walked toward us with a certainty that made every beat of my heart echo through my ribs. His boots crunched softly over the frosted ground, and for a moment, the whole square seemed quiet, like even the cold air was holding its breath. Oliver looked up at me, puzzled. "Mom, Santa's coming." His voice held a mix of awe and nervous excitement, but my body reacted differently. Something warm and frightening fluttered inside my chest, a warning and a longing tangled together. Santa, this strange, intense man hidden behind a costume, stopped a few steps away from us. Up close, his presence felt heavier, like there was more to him than the cheerful disguise he wore. His eyes were even sharper from this distance, but also strangely gentle, like he wasn't sure how close he should come. "I didn't mean to alarm you," he said softly. His voice didn't carry the same theatrical cheer it had before. This voice was real, raw, the kind of voice a man uses when the mask starts slipping. "I just wanted to make sure you got home safely." I blinked, taken aback. "We're fine," I replied a little too quickly. "Really, you don't have to worry." But he didn't look convinced. His eyes moved from my face to Oliver, then back to the package still half wrapped in my hands. "Did you open it?" he asked quietly. I shook my head. "Not yet." His expression shifted. Not relief, not worry, Something deeper, almost regret. He took a slow breath, as if steadying himself before he spoke again. Juliette, if you open it, please don't think it's charity. His voice cracked ever so slightly on the last word, like it tasted wrong to him. It's not. My heart thumped painfully against my ribs. Why did he care so much? Why did he look at me like my pain was something he recognized? I swallowed, my throat tight. Then what is it? I whispered. He didn't answer. Instead, he glanced over his shoulder at the organizers who were now signaling urgently for him to return. He hesitated, then looked back at me, and in his eyes there was a quiet storm conflict, longing, something dangerously close to confession. Just open it when you feel ready, he said. And if you need anything at all, come back to the square tomorrow at the same time. Why? The question slipped out before I could stop it. He held my gaze, and for a second, I felt like he was peeling back every fear I tried to bury. Because I'll be here. And because some things shouldn't be carried alone. Then he stepped back, pulled the red hat lower to hide whatever expression was passing through him, and returned to the throne as if nothing had happened. The crowd swallowed him again. Children climbed into his lap. Cameras flashed. Laughter rose. And yet, every time I looked his way, I caught him glancing at us with a quiet intensity that made my breath catch. Oliver tugged my sleeve again. Mom, can we open it now? His voice snapped me back to the moment. I knelt beside him, my knees pressing against the cold stone, and carefully peeled back the rest of the paper. Inside was not a toy. Not even close. It was an envelope, cream-colored, sealed, with my name written in elegant handwriting I didn't recognize. My stomach tightened. I touched the seal, hesitating. Something about the weight of it felt too heavy for a holiday gift, too intimate for a stranger. Oliver leaned over my shoulder. Maybe it's a letter from Santa, he whispered. Maybe he knows magic. Part of me wanted to smile at that. But another part, the part that had felt the way Santa looked at me, the part that had seen the crack in his voice, knew this wasn't magic. It was something real, something human, and that made it far more dangerous. I broke the seal. Inside was a check written for more money than I had seen in years, enough to pay the rent I owed, enough to keep our house, enough to breathe again. My vision blurred as tears filled my eyes, the cold air stinging them as they spilled down my cheeks. Oliver gasped, confused but excited. Mom, what is it? Couldn't speak. I couldn't even think. All I could do was stare at the check and the small handwritten note attached to it. The handwriting was strong, almost stubborn, with a few letters slightly slanted like the writer had paused too long. The note said only 4 words. You deserve a chance. My breath hitched. My entire body trembled. I looked up instinctively, my eyes searching for him in the crowd, but he was hidden behind a cluster of laughing children. He wasn't looking at us anymore. He wasn't smiling. He was staring down at his gloved hands like he was bracing himself for something he couldn't stop. I folded the check quickly, hiding it inside my coat before anyone else could see. My heart pounded against my ribs, every beat asking the same question. Why would Santa do this for me? I didn't know it yet, but this night was only the beginning. The beginning of something that would unravel every certainty I had about love, about loss, and about the past we both tried so hard to bury. I held the envelope against my chest as if it might disappear if I loosened my grip. The cold wind seemed sharper now, cutting across the square and biting at my cheeks, but I barely felt it. My thoughts were a storm, swirling faster than I could contain them. I looked down at Oliver, who was watching me with wide, hopeful eyes, trusting that whatever I carried in my hands was nothing short of a miracle. I forced myself to breathe, to steady the spinning inside my head. How was I supposed to explain this? How was I supposed to tell my son that Santa Claus, the stranger, had just handed us a lifeline big enough to change everything? Mom? Oliver whispered, wrapping his small fingers around mine. Are we gonna be okay now? His voice cracked on the last word, and hearing that tremble broke something inside me. No 5-year-old should know what it feels like to wonder about losing a home. I crouched down to his level, cupping his face gently. His cheeks were rosy from the cold, his eyes full of a hope I didn't want to shatter. I swallowed hard. I think we might be, sweetheart. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile so pure it made my chest ache. But even as I hugged him tightly, part of me was drowning in confusion. Why would a stranger give us so much? And why did it feel like he wasn't a stranger at all, not truly? There had been something in the way he said my name, something too deliberate, too familiar. Something in the way his eyes searched my face like he was remembering it, not seeing it for the first time. But that didn't make sense. I would remember a man like that, with eyes like that, wouldn't I? I pulled myself together enough to walk home. Clutching Oliver's hand in one of mine, and the envelope pressed safely inside my coat with the other. The village square's music faded behind us as we made our way through the narrow streets, past windows glowing with warm lights and Christmas decorations that made every home look safe, secure, untouched by the kind of uncertainty we lived in. I tried not to compare. I tried not to imagine how different things could have been if life had been kinder, if I had been luckier. The moment we stepped inside our small house, the warmth from the old heater brushed against our frozen skin. Oliver ran to the couch, bouncing with excitement. "Mom, can we read the note again? Please?" I smiled despite myself. "In the morning, sweetheart, it's been a long night." He pouted but nodded, curling beneath the thin blanket that we always fought to keep from fraying. Within minutes, his eyelids drooped, his breathing slowed, and he fell asleep clutching the corner of my coat like he needed the reassurance that this miracle, even if fragile, was real. I sat beside him, brushing a hand through his hair as I thought about tomorrow. "Come back to the square," Santa had said. At the same time, why would he want to see me again? Why did he sound like he needed me there as much as he believed I needed him? My heart raced at the thought. It wasn't attraction, not just that. There had been something raw in his eyes, something that looked like recognition, like regret. As if he was carrying a story of his own, buried beneath the red suit and forced smile. I stood carefully so I wouldn't wake Oliver and made my way to the kitchen table. I pulled out the check and placed it under the dim yellow light. My hands trembled as I traced the ink with my fingertips. It was real, too real, enough to change our future. Enough to make me wonder if fate wasn't something written in the stars, but in the eyes of a stranger who felt strangely familiar. That night I barely slept. I kept replaying every moment, every glance, every word, every strange, intense silence between us. And every time I closed my eyes, his face appeared behind the white beard. His eyes burning through the disguise like he could see straight into the parts of me I tried to hide. I remembered the sound of my name in his voice, the softness and weight of it. No one had said my name like that in years. No one had said it like they cared. By morning, the decision had formed in my chest, even if fear tried to push it away. I would go. I had to. Not because of the money, though that was its own miracle, but because the question burning in my heart wouldn't let me stay away. Who was he? And why did it feel like we were standing on the edge of something I wasn't ready to name? When evening returned, I held Oliver's hand again as we walked toward the square. He chattered excitedly about seeing Santa, about thanking him properly, about giving him a drawing he'd made as a gift. He had used the last of his colored pencils for it. "Do you think he'll like it?" he asked. "I think he'll love it," I answered truthfully, because somehow I knew he would. The square was quieter than the night before. The lights glowed softly, the fountain's frozen edges sparkled, and a thin layer of frost coated the benches like delicate lace. Santa was already there, sitting alone on the wooden throne, his posture less rigid, less performative. It was as if he had dropped the act the moment the crowd faded. He wasn't Santa now, he was just him. Whoever that was, As soon as he saw us, he stood. Not rushed, not eager, just a slow, measured rise, like he was gathering his strength to face something inevitable. Oliver ran ahead, waving the drawing proudly. "Santa, I made this for you." The man smiled, a real smile this time, soft and warm. He knelt to meet Oliver's height, accepting the drawing like it was a priceless treasure. "Thank you, Oliver," he said. "I'll keep it." Then he looked up at me. Really looked. And the air shifted. "Juliette," he said, his voice low. "I'm glad you came." My breath caught. "You said you wanted to talk." He stood slowly, his expression tightening with the weight of something unspoken. "I did, but this might be harder than I thought." A chill ran through, me not from the cold but from the gravity in his tone. "Why?" I whispered. He hesitated, then reached up and removed the red hat. The white wig came off next. And then his hands moved to the beard slowly, deliberately pulling it away until the disguise faded entirely, revealing the man underneath. My heart slammed against my ribs. He wasn't a stranger. Not completely. I knew those eyes. Or I should have. Because years ago, before everything fell apart, before life took everything, there had been a boy with those same silver-gray eyes who sat beside me on a schoolyard bench and promised that one day he'd come back for me. A boy named Landen Ward. The one person I'd loved before the world taught me that love wasn't enough. And now he was standing in front of me again, dressed as Santa, holding my son's drawing with shaking hands. "Juliette," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I didn't know if you'd still remember me." For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. The square around us blurred, the lights, the frost, the faint Christmas music drifting from a nearby speaker, all of it melted into a distant hum. All I could see was him, Landen Ward. The boy who once swore the world felt bigger when we sat beside each other. The boy who left without saying goodbye. The boy who became the man now standing a few steps away from me, dressed in red and breathing like the cold hurt more than it should. My throat closed, my heart pounding so violently I could hear it in my ears. "Landen?" I managed to whisper, barely trusting my voice. His expression tightened, not with pride or confidence, but with something brokens. Something I recognized because I carried the same cracks inside myself. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, it's me. I didn't think this moment would feel like this." Oliver looked between us in confusion, clutching the sleeve of my coat. "Mom? You know Santa?" His innocent voice grounded me, pulling me back from the edge of whatever storm was rising inside my chest. I forced myself to breathe, to kneel beside him, brushing his hair gently as I tried to steady myself. "Sweetheart, this is someone I used to know a long time ago." Landen crouched too, lowering himself to Oliver's level with a gentleness that rippled through me unexpectedly. "Hi, Oliver," he said softly. I'm a friend of your mom's." Oliver blinked at him, studying the unfamiliar face now exposed beneath the costume. "But you were Santa." Landen's smile was fragile. "I still am, just without the beard." Oliver processed that for a moment, then giggled, the sound bright and warm. For a second it made everything feel easier. But then Landen stood, and the weight of the past settled between us again like snow too heavy for the branches holding it. "How?" I swallowed hard, struggling to form the question. "How are you here? Why are you here?" His breath fogged in the cold air. "It's a long story. One I probably should have told you years ago." His gaze drifted over my face, lingering on the exhaustion I didn't have the strength to hide. "But tonight, when I saw you, everything I'd kept buried just came crashing up." I shook my head slightly, my emotions tangled so tightly they almost hurt. "You didn't just see me, Landen. You helped me, you saved us. I don't even understand why." He looked away, jaw tightening. "You deserved help, Juliette. You always did. You deserved more than the life you were forced into." His voice dropped lower, rougher. And I couldn't walk away again, not this time. The words hit something inside me I had tried so hard to keep numb. The iced-over places in my chest cracked, letting something too warm rush through. But warmth wasn't trust. Warmth wasn't forgiveness. I crossed my arms, trying to hold myself together. "You walked away once," I said, more sharply than I intended. Without a word, without anything. His eyes dropped. Shame flickered across his face. "I know. Why?" My voice wasn't angry, it was wounded, trembling. "I waited for you. I thought we meant something to each other." He closed his eyes briefly, as if my words struck a place he'd been trying to protect. "We did," he whispered. "You meant more to me than anything back then. But my father—" He stopped himself, swallowing tightly. "My father found out about us. He had plans for my life, and you weren't in them. He told me if I didn't leave town immediately, he'd make sure your life became harder than mine ever could." My entire body went still. He continued, voice shaking. "He already knew your mom was sick. He already knew you were close to losing your scholarship. He knew you were vulnerable. And he used all of it against me, Juliette. He made me choose between staying with you and risking everything you had, or leaving." I felt the breath leave my lungs in a slow, painful exhale. All those years I had believed he'd simply stopped caring. All those nights wondering what I'd done wrong. All the bitterness I'd swallowed alone suddenly felt heavier, not lighter. Because the truth was complicated. And complicated hurt deeper. "You could have told me," I whispered. "I wanted to," he said. "God, I tried." But he watched everything. Every call. Every message. I wasn't allowed a phone for months. I wasn't allowed to come back. And by the time I finally got free from him, it had been years. I thought— He hesitated, his voice thinning. "I thought I'd already hurt you enough. That reaching out would only open wounds you'd worked hard to close." I stared at him, my heart torn between disbelief and a painful, aching understanding. The boy he had been, the boy I remembered, had been gentle, kind, always afraid of hurting the people he loved. I could see pieces of that boy in the man standing in front of me now, older, wealthier, hardened in places, but still him. "What does any of this have to do with tonight?" I asked softly, afraid of the answer. Landen's eyes shone with something raw, vulnerable. "Because when I came back to this village for the holidays, I never expected to see you again. I didn't expect fate to put you right in front of me." His voice cracked. "And when I heard Oliver talk about losing your home, everything inside me broke." I froze again. The air felt heavier. He stepped closer, not enough to touch me, but enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. "Juliette, I didn't give you that check because I pity you. I gave it to you because I still care. Because I never stopped caring. And because the idea of you and your son losing your home, of you suffering alone, was something I couldn't bear." My heart thundered, my breath trembling. "Landen, you don't even know Oliver." He swallowed, his throat tightening visibly. "He doesn't have to be mine for me to care about him." But meaning behind his words settled over me like a soft, crushing weight. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to feel. Part of me wanted to step away, to protect the fragile life I'd fought so hard to hold together. But another part, the part that remembered the way he once held my hand under the stars, the way he once promised he'd come back for me, wanted to collapse into the warmth he was offering now. Oliver tugged my sleeve again, unaware of the storm swirling between us. "Mom, can Santa come to our house? Can he have dinner with us?" My breath caught, and I looked at Landen instinctively. He wasn't smiling, he looked scared, as if he wanted to say yes more than anything, but didn't believe he deserved to. "Only if your mom wants me to," he said quietly. The world held its breath. And in that moment, standing between my past and my uncertain future, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't afraid of him ruining my life. I was afraid of wanting him in it. I didn't answer Oliver right away. I couldn't. My heart was beating too loudly, echoing in the fragile space between me and Landen. The cold air felt thin, sharp, like every breath might shatter into pieces if I exhaled too hard. Oliver tugged at my hand again, still hopeful, still innocent. I forced myself to look down at him, and then up at the man I once loved, the man who had broken me without meaning to, and who now stood before me trembling like he was the one afraid of being abandoned. "Mom?" Oliver whispered. "Can he come?" I looked into Landen's eyes that once held all the warmth I thought I'd never see again. Now they held something deeper, something bruised, something longing. His expression wasn't confident or charismatic like the wealthy man he had become. It was soft and uncertain, almost pleading. I realized then that he wasn't just hoping I'd say yes. He was terrified I'd say no. And the truth was, I didn't know if I should say yes. Part of me wanted to run, to protect what little stability I had rebuilt, to shield Oliver from a story that might end with another goodbye. But another part of me, quiet, trembling, stubborn, knew that refusing him would bruise something inside me that had already been cracked for years. "Not tonight," I said gently, my voice low. "It's late." Oliver's shoulders fell slightly, but he nodded, trusting my decision. Before disappointment could settle, I knelt and brushed a hand across his cheek. "But maybe soon," I added softly. When I stood again, Landen was watching me with a silent breath of relief. "Juliette," he said, voice softer than the wind. "Thank you." Not for agreeing, just for not walking away. I didn't know how to respond. So instead, I asked the only question that mattered. "What are you doing here, Landen?" "Really?" He hesitated, glancing at the empty square that had already begun to close for the night. The wooden throne sat vacant, the lights flickering softly like fading stars. When he turned back, his expression wasn't guarded anymore. It wasn't the face of a rich man in a costume. It was just Landen, tired, remorseful, and searching for something he didn't know how to ask for. "I came back because my mother died," he said finally. I inhaled sharply. The words hung in the air between us, raw and trembling. "She passed in October," he continued, his voice thickening. "And when I settled her estate, I realized she'd been donating anonymously to families in this village for years. I didn't know. I thought she'd grown cold after my father died, but she'd been helping people quietly in her own way. I came here to understand her, to feel closer to her." His eyes flicked to the Santa suit folded over the back of the throne, and the charity organizers were desperate for volunteers this year, so I put on the costume. Something in my chest tightened. Despite everything between us, despite the years and the silence, I could see the boy he used to be in that moment, the boy who always wanted to do good, even when he didn't know how. "I didn't expect to see you," he added. "Not here, not like this." I lowered my eyes to the ground. "I didn't expect to see you either." And when I did, his voice faltered, cracking just enough for the truth to slip out. "I didn't have a plan. I just knew I couldn't sit there and watch you struggle. Not after everything. Not again." The cold stung my eyes, or maybe it was tears. I wasn't sure anymore. We stood in silence for a moment, the kind that felt too full, too fragile, like speaking might break the spell holding us together. Then Oliver tugged my coat again, his small voice breaking through the heavy quiet. "Mom, can we go home now? I'm cold." His simplicity grounded me, reminded me that life wasn't made of dramatic confessions. It was made of small hands, tired nights, and decisions that shaped the next day. "Yes," I said softly. "Let's go home." When I turned back to Landen, he looked like he wanted to ask something, to reach for me, to say the words he'd been holding back for years. But instead he stepped aside, giving me space. "Can I see you tomorrow?" he asked quietly. My breath caught. The question wasn't demanding. It wasn't assuming. It was a plea. "I don't know," I admitted. "I need time." He nodded once, accepting the ache behind my words. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here." There was something heartbreaking about the way he said it. as if waiting for me was the only thing that felt right anymore. I turned and walked away, Oliver's hand in mine. The wind brushed past us, carrying faint echoes of laughter from the memories I thought I'd buried long ago. I didn't look back. I couldn't. But I felt him watching us until we disappeared around the corner. When we reached home, I tucked Oliver into bed. He fell asleep almost instantly, exhausted from the excitement. I sat beside him, brushing a hand across his forehead as I thought about everything Landen had said. My mother used to tell me that some people return to our lives at the wrong time for the right reasons. Tonight, that felt true. I should have been relieved. I should have felt saved, grateful, hopeful. Instead, I felt a fear I hadn't expected. The fear that Landen's return might give me back feelings I'd spent years teaching myself to live without. Later, after the house had gone quiet, I pulled the envelope from my coat again. The check felt heavier now, knowing who it came from, knowing why. I traced the edges with my fingertips, whispering into the dim room. "What do you want from me, Landen?" There was no answer, only the echo of a past that had found its way back to my door. For the next 2 days, I avoided the village square, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't trust myself. Every time I thought about Landen, his trembling voice, the regret in his eyes, the way he looked at Oliver like he already cared, my heart tightened with a mixture of longing and fear. I had spent years building walls around the ruins he left behind. Wasn't sure those walls could survive another winter, much less his return. Still, the check sat in the drawer beside my bed like a heartbeat I couldn't ignore. It wasn't the money that haunted me. It was the message attached to it. You deserve a chance. No one had said anything like that to me in years. On the third night, just after putting Oliver to sleep, I stepped outside to breathe. The air was crisp and sharp. Snowflakes drifted from the sky, landing softly on my coat. I watched them melt, disappearing faster than I could appreciate their beauty. And then I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, hesitant, familiar. "Juliette?" His voice didn't startle me. I think I had been expecting him all along. I turned, and there he was. No Santa suit, no disguise. Just Landen in a dark coat, his breath trembling in the cold, his expression a storm barely held together. "I'm sorry," he said immediately, the words escaping him like he'd rehearsed them for nights. "I didn't want to intrude. I needed to know if you were okay." I crossed my arms, partly from the cold, partly to hold myself together. "I'm fine." His eyes scanned my face gently, like he didn't quite believe me. "I've been waiting at the square," he admitted quietly, "every evening, just in case you came back." Something fluttered inside my chest, dangerous and warm. "I wasn't ready," I whispered. "I know." He stepped closer, but not too close. "But I'm here when you are." The silence between us settled like snowfall, soft, persistent, impossible to ignore. After a moment, I finally asked the question that had been eating at me since the night we met again. "Why did you help me, Landen? Really? And don't tell me it's because of the past. We were kids. That was a lifetime ago." He inhaled shakily, his breath forming clouds in the freezing air. "I helped you," he said slowly, "because I couldn't bear the thought of you carrying everything alone, and because seeing you again felt like being handed a second chance I don't deserve." I looked down, the weight of his words sinking deep. He took another small step, his voice almost breaking. "Juliette, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything from you. But I couldn't walk away again, not when you needed someone." A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Soft, sad, full of old wounds. "And what makes you think I want you in my life now?" His expression cracked, but he didn't look away. "Because when I saw you in that square, when you looked at me, even before you knew who I was, something in me felt like it finally stopped running." The truth of his words hit me with the force of a memory I'd tried to forget. Thunderstorms in the summer. Sneaking out at night to stare at stars. His hand in mine under the school bleachers. The way he smiled at me like I was the first breath he took after drowning. Those memories had lived dormant inside me, buried beneath years of struggle. And now, looking at him, they stirred like ghosts waking from sleep. But I wasn't that girl anymore. And he wasn't that boy. "You hurt me," I whispered. He closed his eyes. "I know. You left without saying goodbye. I know. You broke something in me I never learned how to fix." His eyes filled with tears. He tried to blink away. "Juliette, I've lived with that guilt every day. I'm not asking you to forget what I did. I'm asking you to let me be here now. As someone who won't run this time," my throat tightened painfully. It would have been easier if he'd come back proud, arrogant, pretending the past didn't exist. But he wasn't that. He was raw, human, barely holding himself together. And that was what made it harder. "Mom?" The small voice behind us made both of us turn. Oliver stood in the doorway, rubbing his eyes, his hair sticking up adorably. "Is Santa here again?" Landen exhaled a shaky laugh, and I felt something inside me soften in a way I wasn't ready to admit. "Not Santa," I said gently, touching Oliver's shoulder. "This is Landen." Oliver blinked up at him. "Are you Mom's friend now?" The question hung in the air, heavier than anything I could have said. Landen looked at me, not asking permission, not assuming, just quietly waiting for my answer. I knelt beside Oliver, brushing his hair from his forehead. "He's someone from my past," I said softly. "Someone who might be part of our future, if we're careful." Landen inhaled sharply as if those words pierced something tender inside him. Oliver nodded, satisfied with an answer he didn't fully understand. Then he stretched his small hand toward Landen. "Do you want to come inside? It's cold." Landen froze. He looked at Oliver's outstretched hand, then at me. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I simply nodded. He stepped forward slowly, as if approaching something holy. Then he took Oliver's hand in his own. And with that small gesture, so simple, so impossibly meaningful, something shifted inside me. Something I thought I'd lost. Hope. Inside. The house was warm and dimly lit. Oliver returned to bed, drifting back to sleep quickly. I waited in the small kitchen, my hands wrapped around a chipped mug of tea, watching the steam rise like a fragile promise. Landen stood across from me, silent, nervous, watching me like I held the answer to a question he'd been carrying for years. "I don't know what's supposed to happen now," I admitted quietly. He shook his head. "You don't have to know, we can take it one step at a time." I looked down at my hands, at the cracks in my nails, at the exhaustion in my skin. "I'm scared," I whispered. He stepped closer, just enough to feel the warmth of him, not enough to touch. "So am I." Tears stung my eyes. "I can't afford to break again, Landen. Not now. Not with Oliver." His voice softened into something I wasn't prepared for. "Then let me be the one thing that doesn't break." My breath trembled, escaping me like a confession. "Promise me you won't disappear again," I whispered. He took a slow, careful breath. "I promise. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just real." And somehow, that made it believable. He didn't reach for me, he didn't kiss me, he didn't try to reclaim anything too big too soon. Instead, he simply sat beside me at the small kitchen table, leaving just an inch of space between us. Close enough to feel him, far enough to stay safe. And for the first time in years, I felt something I had almost forgotten existed. A beginning. Not perfect, not easy, but ours, fragile, tender, and possible. The kind of beginning people wait a lifetime to find.